Welcome everybody. We're just going to give a moment for folks to join us. And we are broadcasting live on Facebook also. All right, we'll get started. Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our conversation today with CPT Rûnbîr Serkepkanî. And this is going to be about his experiences of growing up in Kurdistan, crossing borders, and becoming the CPT Support Coordinator for the Aegean Migrant Solidarity Program, working with refugees on the island of Lesvos, Greece. We'd love to know who is joining us, so feel free to put who you are and where you're joining us from in the chat box. For myself, my name is Alicia Rinkowska, and I'm the Development Coordinator at Christian Peacemaker Teams. I'm also the former Palestine team member, and I'm joining you today from Chicago. Just a little housekeeping before we do get started. We've got a Q&A box at the bottom, if you're joining from Zoom, at the bottom of the screen, or if you're joining on Facebook, you can also write it in the chat box. So if you have any questions, please put those in there, and we're gonna make some time at the end to get to those. And if we don't answer them, we're still gonna dedicate time after the webinar to get through them. So please do put your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box, or if you're on Facebook. For those of you who don't know us, Christian Peacemaker Teams, or CPT as we're known, is an organization that trains everyday people to work in local peacemaker communities that are confronting situations of lethal conflict, partnering with them to transform violence and oppression. And you can find out more about us at cpt.org, and I'll be posting some links in the chat box for you to access that. So I'd like to welcome Rûnbîr. It's wonderful to have you with us today. And I've had the pleasure of speaking with you on several occasions about your experiences and how borders have shaped your life since childhood. And I just wanted to start by having you tell us a bit more about that experience for you.
Yeah, thank you for providing this opportunity for me to talk about my experiences. So my name is Rûnbîr Serkepkanî. I am from the village of Serkepkan. It's a small town now, since a few years ago. I was born 1984 in the northern part of Zagros Mountains, northern Iraq, or southern Kurdistan, whatever. It depends on your ideology or nationality or your way of seeing where I come from. I belong to Ako tribe, which inhabits a part of north, like Zagros Mountains. And I was born, according to my grandma, I was born 2 years after the landowner Swaraga, who's the lord of our village still. He surrendered to the Iraqi government. He was with the Kurdish revolution and the Kurdish resistance, and he surrendered to them. I was born into a family which was very much scarred by borders, and they were very much involved in crossing those borders. I was born in the middle of the Iraqi-Irani war, in the middle of the Kurdish resistance against Iraqi occupation. And my family were very involved in the resistance. Since I was a kid, my earliest memories are about how my father and my uncles were loading our horse, that they were taking alcohol, video cassettes of dance, Iranian music, and other forbidden material to take them across the border between Iraq and Iran. And so this was like a part of our income. So like I was born in a place where many people were making a living by doing cross-border business or trade or smuggling. So one of the tragedies what happened to my family was that my uncle was arrested by the Iraqi government during those times when they crossed the border, and he was sentenced to death. Fortunately, during the first Gulf War, when he was taken to a place where he was supposed to be killed, he was freed by the guy who was driving them, along with 2 others. So he came back all the way from southern Iraq to our place with handcuffs. So one of my family has been, because we are close to the border and also in the mountainous area. All the revolutions have had their it has always been controlled by the revolution or poorly controlled by the central government. So several times my village has been burned by the Iraqi government, and also in the end of the 80s, 2 villages after Serkepkanî. After that, everything was destroyed and people had been displaced to other places. 10 kilometers from Serkepkanî, there is a place which is called Bote, 15 kilometers. It was attacked by chemical weapons. 20 kilometers from Serkepkanî, another village was attacked by chemical weapons. The survivors were brought to the nearby town, put in a hospital, and then they were taken to southern Iraq and massacred there. And a lot of those chemical attacks which were happening in the end of 80s were happening around this area, 50 kilometers range, 20 kilometers range. But our village was not attacked directly because the chieftain of the village had surrendered to the Iraqi government. His father was always with the Peshmerga. So I grew up, this is my earliest memories, but then in the 90s, the civil war started in Iraqi Kurdistan between PUK and KDP, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan and Kurdistan's Democratic Party. And once again, we were put in the middle of this war. My mother fell victim for it. Someone had put a grenade bomb on her door. She opened the door, and then some pieces of that bomb went into her spine, and she lost her. She became paralyzed from waist down. So I live with her now in Sweden. And my first memory, which is very strong of being on in a refugee camp, was 1996, when KDP, Kurdistan Democratic Party, they attacked the areas which were controlled by Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, and my father was Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. So we had to flee to a place a border area, which is called Çele. So it's a very mountainous area, and we were put in a refugee camp. Our food was provided by the Iranian government and UN. And we were living in a tent. One time, it was so, the wind was so strong that it broke this thing that was holding up the tent. And all these borders, which divide my country, it divides my tribal area where I come from. They are all covered by landmines. They are covered by military, and they are protected by airplanes and by all violent means that you can imagine. So both parts of the border, I remember very well, that the villages around Çele where we were, they were speaking the same dialect as I do, the same accent. And I was in the 6th grade before this happened, and I was in love with a girl in my class, and her family was in another camp. So I was like trying to survive the harshness of the refugee camp by like writing poems to her and writing letters to her that never reached her. So yeah, this was like, we came back to Rania. Like we moved from Serkepkanî and we came back to Rania to a totally changed world. Like massacres had happened, like people had been killed. And during all this time, like people were like dying because they were stepping on landmines and all these things. So like, and also like there was a border added to the borders which had divided our country, which was built in Iraqi Kurdistan between the areas which were like controlled by PUK and areas which were controlled by KDP. And also another border, which like between Iraqi Kurdistan and like the parts of Iraqi Kurdistan which were controlled by those two parties, and the parts of Iraqi Kurdistan which were controlled by Iraqi government. So yeah, like I mean, like you just like, and also like so many checkpoints everywhere. So like it's like I grew up in a military zone in 6 wars, and the Kurdish, I mean, the society where I grew up, it's been like very much shaped by like a constant struggle for survival, a constant struggle to stay sane. And if you want to be a good member of the society, you need to be loyal to any price, loyal to the grade that if you are if you are imprisoned and you are tortured and they kill you, but you still don't betray someone else. And if you do so, you lose your face, your family loses their face. So like, it's like, because we are always like in the state of occupation. This is how like occupied societies are divided and like kind of crushed and broken in pieces. So yeah, like this is a little bit about like how I grew up. Yeah, and how this has like shaped me. A little background. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. I was just asking around this personal experience of yours that you had. Like, how did it get you involved with the struggle against borders?
So my father migrated to Sweden like year 2000. He had some problems in Iraqi Kurdistan and he couldn't stay there. So he left for Sweden and we stayed like, we stayed in Kurdistan. Like meanwhile, like I was growing up, like I was in my teenagers. I became a communist and I was like rebelling against PUK and against KDP and all those parties. I was questioning, like asking myself many questions during this time. So I grew like kind of, I was shaped as a human when he was not there in Kurdistan. And then 2004, we got our residency in Sweden because Sweden gives like family like the right to get unified with your family if you are an asylum seeker. So all of a sudden I had to break up with my girlfriend and like kind of like break with my all this life that I had built in 20 years. And I didn't want to move from Kurdistan, but like I was separated from everything I loved and everything which had shaped me. And it really, like it was about to break me very deeply. So I came to Sweden and I was like facing a lot of racism because I was brown and I wasn't blonde. Like slowly, like, I mean, I was a social democrat when I came. Like like kind of a social democrat. I believed in the system. I was like, this is all of Palmer's land. They believe in equality. Everyone will be equal. If you take your responsibility, if you pay your taxes, they will include you. They will love you, and they will give you all the rights you deserve as a responsible citizen. But I learned Swedish very well, and I went for it all. I learned Swedish. I learned, I read all Swedish poetry and literature and everything. I was like listening to Swedish ballads. And then slowly, it was like revealed for me that it's a divided society. There are citizens and there are non-citizens. There are people with documents and people without documents, people who have access to healthcare, to the social welfare, and to all those things, who can study, and people who are free to go wherever they want, and people who don't have the right to go wherever they want. People who are afraid to even go to the market because the police would catch them and deport them. And this really angered me. So I got involved in the pro-asylum groups who were like helping migrants with their rights. And slowly, like I got like just more and more involved because I could speak many languages, and people who were in those detention centers were like waiting for deportation, people who were starving and like couldn't get treatment for their toothache because they didn't have right papers. They spoke my languages. They spoke Arabic, they spoke Farsi, they spoke Kurdish. And I felt responsible. I was like, okay, I need to take my responsibility. So I got involved with clinics who were helping people who were hiding and undocumented. I got involved with the Red Cross, like legal aid group for migrants. And we were doing a lot more than the legal aid that we were allowed to do. And then 2013, I heard from a friend of mine, from a colleague of mine, at the Red Cross, Terry Holmgren, I think he's in the webinar, that there is this walk that some migrant activists are planning to do from southern Sweden, from Malmö to Stockholm, to raise awareness about the rights of migrants. And Terry and I were planning to do a long walk anyways, because I love walking. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna join this walk. So I contacted the people in Malmö, and then I went there in the summer, and then we started doing this walk. And there was this guy, Christopher Hatton. He was like saying, I am from Christian Peacemaker Teams. And I was like, who is this weird organization? So he told me about CPT a little bit. I mean, this is like, we are like going into borders already. And he said that they are there to accompany unaccompanied minors. And I had never heard about this organization. And he said that they're in Iraqi Kurdistan and they are in Palestine and all those places. He was a really nice man. And then after that, I met Annika Spalde, who's one of my role models, actually, because before that I was also involved in the like supporting UFUG from outside a little. UFUG, it's an organization who are like working against arms, and they had made some actions going into the Swedish weapon factories to dismantle weapons. So I met Annika Spalde, and she said that she's also working with CPT. And I know that, I know Annika from before because I had been writing the letters when she was imprisoned, like some years before, for an action she did with some comrades. So, so this is kind of like how I got involved. Like I got to know. So we did this walk, and then after that, like slowly, like I got to know CPT more. I went back to Kurdistan and I visited Iraqi Kurdistan team, and they say that they're working with like I met Lukas Firla and some other people there, and even though I'm not Christian, like I don't identify myself to be belonging to any specific faith, but really it fascinated me that like there is an organization who is working against the exploitation of the area where I come from, like by the oil companies. Like ExxonMobil was digging for oil outside Serkepkanî, where I come from, and they were trying to expand into Shauri, which is the deeper, the higher part of the valley where I come from. And Lukasz told me, oh, like we are accompanying people who are active against, who are trying to do actions against ExxonMobil and other oil companies who are trying to come into the area. So I was like, okay, this looks interesting. So after a little while, like I was eventually like invited to Lukasz's wedding, and like eventually got to know people who were working on Lesvos with CPT. So I was invited to go to Lesvos. And 2015, I went there just before the big wave of migration, migrants who arrived on the island. I went there and worked with CPT actually. We were very overwhelmed by this wave. And once again, like, I mean, for the first time in my life, I could see, not for the first time, I could imagine that the asylum system in Europe, I already know that the asylum system in Europe is like, it's a European project. It's not only like specific to a country, but in Lesbos, it was like more obvious, like how Greek police and the Coast Guard were beating up migrants with tools that were bought by EU money, and how they were imprisoning migrants in Moria concentration camp with the fences which were bought by EU money. And it was like very like physical, you know, all this connection that EU is doing this all together. So those fences are set up by EU, and the Frontex, who is like trying to like prevent migrants from coming, they are funded by EU. It's European police from Poland, from Sweden, from all those European countries. So, and I mean, I had lost my faith in nation states a long time ago, but you know, like there's this little hope, you know, that you try to like protect it a little bit, you know, like not to be totally disappointed of nation states and welfare states and the West, the liberal project of democracy and welfare state and all these things. And like, when you see how the poor people from outside Europe are treated with European weapons, and like how they are prevented with European weapons and imprisoned by European fences, then like you lose that little hope that you still wanted to protect, you know. So I mean, this is a little bit like how I like how my engagement with migrants in Sweden kind of like naturally like flow with my heritage in Iraqi Kurdistan, CPT, and also like how my engagement on Lesbos. Yeah.
Thanks, Rûnbîr. Could you like talk to us a bit more about CPT, how you actually became the program support coordinator for the Aegean Migrant Solidarity Program, sorry, and what the work is like on Lesbos, working with refugees?
Yeah. So, yeah, so AMS has had many names. It has been called like CPT Mediterranean, like CPT Lesbos, and some other names, but now it's called Aegean Migrant Solidarity. 2015 when I went there, and I was burying like dead migrants who had lost their lives, their names, their stories, and everything in the sea. And they were killed by European borders. And I was like, we were trying to make it as dignified as possible with other CPTers, with comrades from Moria to Olimazi or the village of Altogether, who were like the partner who invited CPT to Lesbos, with other people who were in solidarity with migrants. I felt a sense of siblinghood, of solidarity, that I had never felt before, like in Europe, with any other group. And also like this, the fact that we were so few dealing with such a traumatic, at the same time, amazing experience of seeing 600,000 migrants crossing the island of Lesvos in 2015. It like kind of bound my heart to Lesvos. I mean, even before that, I loved Lesvos. Like I loved the music there, the food, and all these things. And I felt that like I belong there. So the project was like 3 months. It was like a temporary regional project. It started in 2014. We were invited by Khoureto Olimazi or Village of Altogether to the island, and we were accompanying the community-built camp of Pikpa, and also monitoring trials against people who were accused of smuggling, mainly migrants or poor Turks, like Turkish citizens, especially from Ayvalık, which is like the town in the opposite of Mytilene on the Turkish side. So this kind of kept me there. And also like the fact that in CPT, even though like, I mean, I don't identify myself as a Christian, but like this culture of reflection and solidarity and like undoing oppressions also kept me in this Christian organization, even though I am not Christian. And also that I was respected the way I was, without being Christian, without being so many other things. So I came back to the island in 2016, and also in 2017 we had a convergence with other comrades in Europe, like CPTers in Europe, people from DMFK, from CPT Netherlands, and others who have been supporting the project for a long time. We decided that we need to have a permanent presence on the island. So I went back to the island 2017 permanently, and during this time we have been monitoring we have kept monitoring trials against smugglers. Our big report about this is going to come out soon. Like it's a result of like monitoring trials against smugglers since 2014 until recently. We have been accompanying hunger strikes. We have been accompanying actions made by migrants like sitting protests. We have been monitoring the violence against migrants like at the port in different places in Mytilene and also in the concentration camp of Moria. We have been holding workshops, IVP workshops, Alternatives to Violence Project, which is like an amazing workshop that I discovered in Iraq, Kurdistan, where CPT was with some other partners were doing, and like to create a sense of community among strangers, and also to talk about violence and oppressions and what feelings it creates among us, and how we can kind of transform this oppression and violence to something that can help us build a community. So we brought it to Lesbos, and we started doing those workshops with a very I mean limited, because a limited amount of people could participate in the workshops, but great for those who participated. And we have been also like monitoring deportations. We have been accompanying LGBTQ people. We have been accompanying other marginalized groups on the island, and also like building partnerships with different people who are like with different ideologies and ways to like of perception, who work against the oppressions against migrants on the island, and also against islanders, because the islanders of Lesbos, they didn't choose to be in a place where EU has decided to make to a prison for poor people who are trying to cross the violent border, the dangerous, murderous border into Europe. So this was kind of like, this has been like, during all this time, this is what we have been doing. So after, it was in 2017, I think, I had such a like traumatic experience of like, we had such a hard work, like accompanying a hunger strike. And after that, I said, well, I need to stop drinking alcohol, and I need to stop smoking, and I need to find someone with whom I can. I was like tired of being single all this time. So I met my wife shortly after that, and we got married in the end of 2018, and we eventually she got pregnant, and we decided to move back to Sweden, where my family is, where my son was born. So I was living in Lesvos until recently, until the end of September last year. But due to my personal situation, and also the gift my son Dastan, who was given to us, we moved back to Sweden, and now we live here. But I didn't want to stop working with AMS. So when the opportunity of becoming a program support coordinator for AMS appeared, like I applied for it, and happily I am like PSC for AMS now. So it's been a painful but an amazing journey. Like, I have learned so many things during this time. I have learned that like wherever there are no non-violent borders which divide people. Of course, there are different kinds of communities, and those communities have their boundaries. But the borders which divide us now, they're all violent, and they're all protected by weapons and by armies and by occupation powers. And of course, there are some invisible powers, with sometimes like borders are not really protected, like the ones in within EU, but during the time of COVID-19, we could feel that there are borders, and those borders have a violent history as well, even though maybe they are not as violent as before, but they have a violent history, and they are still dividing like communities and people. And for me, like, borders are about class, they are about racism, and they are about militarism, and also they are about like ecological exploitation. And without abolishing those borders which divide us that much, we cannot achieve economic justice and also political justice in this world, which we need so much while we are like facing challenges of climate change. What EU is doing now in Lesbos is that they try to experiment on people, on migrants, about how to prevent poor people from coming into EU in the case of like the further escalation of climate changes, because migrants will keep coming to more stable ecological areas, to more stable climates, to more prosperity, and also to more political stability, because we have lost our living habitat, we have lost our political stability, we have lost our communities in the other parts of the world. So of course we want to like secure those things for our kids and for ourselves. And EU and also other rich countries are trying to push the poor parts of the world, the dispossessed parts of the world, back by those military means, but they will not succeed.
Well, thanks, Rûnbîr. We're just going to move to some questions now. If you weren't here at the very start, I just want to mention again that we have a Q&A box if you're joining us on Zoom, where you can put any questions, or in the chat box if you're joining us on Facebook. So we've got a question here that asks, whilst you were on Lesvos, did you meet any Kurdish migrants? And if so, what was their reaction knowing that you're a Kurdish person with CPT?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so when you were serving on Lesvos,
Yeah.
did you meet any Kurdish migrants? And
Yeah.
if so, what was their reaction when they knew that you were serving with CPT?
Yeah, I met many Kurdish migrants, and I don't think they didn't know really like what CPT was, those I met. But I know that like we have had several Kurdish partners, migrants on the island, and they get quite amazed when I tell them that we are, like CPT is struggling against oil companies. They are monitoring borders, which are like border areas which are bombed by Turkey and Iran. So they get quite impressed by CPT when I tell them about this. So this is my experience of this. But like, I haven't met any Kurdish migrants who know about CPT, like before meeting us.
Thanks, Rûnbîr. I'm going to go to another question now. So you mentioned that you once identified as a communist. How would you define your political outlook today? And how has your recent life experience and migrant solidarity work shaped it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where, politically, I don't know where I belong. I don't believe in states. I don't believe in military. And I don't believe in borders. I believe in deep economical and political democracy. And I believe in peace. I believe in deep ecology. And I believe in communities. I think that we can make our decisions with consensus, and people can get more autonomy without without the human society falling apart and going chaotic, as all the Hobbesians are saying. So I'm not a communist, and I'm not a social democrat. I was a communist during when I was 17, but then after that I kind of like left communism. I still like Marx a lot, but I'm not a Marxist, no. And definitely like my experience with migrants and also seeing border violence has definitely shaped my political views, especially when it comes to like witnessing so much police violence, and also like kind of like talking with people who are in prison, who are unjustly imprisoned. And I didn't have to like read any anti-prison, any prison abolitionists in order to like start believing that prisons are unjust. We were seeing it by our own. Like, I mean, in Sweden, I know many people who are in prison and who just need like more love and care, and maybe more like a little bit of restorative justice. So yeah, I mean, of course, what I have been bearing witness to have definitely shaped me as a person and my political views. And this is why, probably that's why I'm so radical. Because like reflection, when you witness so much violence and injustice, and at the same time, if you celebrate life and also like see why you are struggling, because I always try to remember, why am I struggling? I struggle because I want everyone to be able to dance, to enjoy their lives, to see their kids growing up, to be able to love whoever they want, and to be able to see forests around them, see other species have a fair integration with each other, and all these things. When you imagine this, you know, it shapes you. Then you remind yourself why you struggle. To celebrate life. I struggle because I want to celebrate life, you know. And this is my political view. Maybe sometimes I call myself anarchist, but when I see so many exclusive like very oppressive anarchists. I don't want to call myself that.
Thank you, Rûnbîr. We have another question here. So what does the LGBTQ solidarity look like on Lesvos?
So LGBTQ people in Lesbos, they are extra affected by the border violence because they are facing the oppressions from other migrant like from the heterosexist cultures from different migrant communities that they come from themselves, and also heterosexism from people who live on Lesbos, and heterosexism from the police and Coast Guard. So the solidarity, there are several groups, but one group that we are involved in is has been operating like in a very autonomous way since a few years ago, and CPT has been involved in different ways in that group. Individuals from AMS have been helping with different functions in the group. So they provide legal help to LGBTQ people trying to find accommodation, trying to help people, like hide people when they are facing violence, try to like guide them around when they are like when they don't know where to go. Try to like be good friends and good brothers and sisters and comrades, because this is exactly what you need when you are like the oppressed of the oppressed, like on a Greek island where you are dispossessed of every freedom of movement.
Thanks, Rûnbîr. Another question here. So are there any updates of what's happening this time?
Sorry, I didn't hear the updates.
Yeah, we want to know about the Moria camp and if there's any updates about what's happening there.
So the Moria camp is still under quarantine. They say that it's going to continue until the 1st of June. We don't know. Like the rest of the island has opened. Several migrants who were queuing outside our partner organization Legal Center a few days ago were given fines of 150 euros each. This is a huge amount of money for migrants. It's like around $170 or something. So just like the police just went to Legal Center, they saw several migrants queuing outside, and they had already been given permission by the authorities to go there. But since they couldn't see, because they don't communicate with each other so much, the authorities, they were given the fines. So they just want to make the life harder for migrants. So there's a lot of violence like among migrants themselves. Like, I mean, like imagine around 20,000 people being locked in a very close area with poor access to food and water. What do? You start fighting against each other. So there has been a lot of like several casualties of like a woman got killed a few like 1 week ago or something. There was a young guy killed 1.5 months ago. So yeah, this is the situation of Moria camp, and like it's getting worse and worse. And it's very difficult for people to cross over to Greece right now because the surveillance of the border has increased a lot. And Turkey is like pushing back everyone. And there are also like reports of the Greek government taking back people who have already arrived in Greece. This didn't happen before, but now there are very well documented cases of people who have been taken back like by the Coast Guard directly to the Turkish water. Or like people who just disappear. And then when like Alarm Phone, who's an organization who are like accompanying people who are like crossing the sea, they monitor them, they are in communication with them. Then they found out that they have ended up in Turkey, like So like this mysterious disappearances have been happening a lot like lately.
Thanks, Rûnbîr. I've got another question here. So based on these experiences you've had, when you return to Kurdistan, what is that experience like for you?
I mean, when I return back, it's my home. I feel, I don't know, I just want to have a lot of cups of teas, a lot of, visit all my cousins, go to mountains, like go to my favorite cafes and tea houses, and also my favorite peaks. Unfortunately, a lot of peaks that I like, that I want to walk there, like mountains, they are under attack by Turkey, so I cannot go there anymore. People from my hometown have been killed in their villages while having a barbecue. CPT has been like monitoring several such cases in the area. So we need to like find out, like before we go for a walk in the mountain, we need to find out, like, have Turkish drones been there? Is it safe to go there? Are there landmines? You know, asking yourself these questions. But yeah, like people are used to this. I mean, like they need to survive. So it's not, they just try to find the little freedom they have, you know? So when I go back to Kurdistan, yeah, like I get really angry by the checkpoints. I get angry by the corruption, by the exploitation of people by the oil companies, by the destruction of the environment by the government and companies, like the destruction of the rural communities. Yeah, I get really angry. At the same time, the mountains are still there, the sky is still there, and like they still make me happy. So I still love going back to my hometown, and this is where I want to live. I just need to convince my partner. Yeah, difficult process.
I've had quite a few questions around how folks can get involved with being in solidarity with refugees and with the work in AMS. Are there things that we can do in our home communities?
So you can invite us to talk to your home community. You can invite other people who are on the island who can give information about what's going on. You can give money to AMS. You can give money to other partner organizations of AMS, Legal Center, HIAS, LGBTQ support group, deportation monitoring, Aegean. There are so many amazing people who are doing amazing stuff. Follow what's going on. So yeah, like there are many things you can do, and you can just like contact me. I can put out my email there if you have any requests or any questions. Yeah, I'm more than happy to respond and to accommodate any requests if like for talking and stuff like that.
Thanks for posting that, Rûnbîr. Okay, we have one more question. And it's around those who commit violent acts in Kurdistan. What place do you think they're out of? For example, the PKK.
Sorry, can you repeat this question?
So for those who commit violent acts in Kurdistan, what place do you think they're acting out of? For example, the PKK, what are they trying to achieve?
PKK is an organization like other organizations in Kurdistan who have been resisting the occupation of Turkey, Iran, and Iraq and Syria. So I don't know any Kurdish organization in the resistance who have not been making 10,000 mistakes and killing innocent people. But nothing can be compared with the systematic killings and destruction that Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria has been doing during the time that they have occupied our country and divided our country. So I'm not I'm not a supporter of PKK or any I'm not associated with any party, with any political party. I don't believe in political parties. I believe in movements. So yeah, I represent myself, and I talk out of my own experiences. But when it comes to like the resistance in Kurdistan, like, and PKK in this, yeah, I mean, as Haruki Murakami says, if an egg hits a wall, which one? It's of course I will support the egg against the wall, even though it's a violent act. So yeah, I mean, PKK is not an egg. It's a huge organization with millions of supporters all over Kurdistan, like all over Kurdistan, not only in Turkey, in Iran, in Syria, in Iraq, and especially in Turkey. And they have inspired people to like learn their language again, to resist, to think differently. But they have also been killing many people. I know people who have been killed by PKK, like really nice people. But I also know how Turkey is cracking down on people. Like, I remember the massacre in Cizre. Turkey, how Turkey like destroyed Cizre and Sebin, Sur district in Diyarbakir. It happened like a few years ago. They killed 2,000 people, just like this, like in a matter of weeks. Innocent people, like in one, like they went into what's it called? You know, like like the space under the house. What's it called? Storage or something. 60, 80 people were hiding there, and the Turkish government, like the Turkish forces, went in and they killed everyone. You know, they didn't ask who they were, what their names were, how involved they were in PKK or anything like this. They just killed everyone. So when you face this, of course, there are reactions, and those reactions are not always the ones you expect them to be.
Thanks for sharing that, Rûnbîr. We've actually got time for a couple more questions. We've got one here about Lesvos and the team. How many people are currently on the team in Lesvos, and where are they from?
So we have from right now we have 2 people. From 1st of June we will have 4 people on team. They are from Greece, from Catalonia, from Britain, and from Turkey. And they all live on Lesvos.
Thank you. And we've got a question. What is the average age of persons in the Moria camp?
Young, but there are also like a variety of ages. There are many elderly people, a lot of kids, but many like young people. That's why COVID-19 hasn't been like even though it would hit Moria, like it wouldn't hit it too hard, because like it's such a young population. I mean, it's the analysis of the authorities, not my analysis. Okay.
We have a question here about like where you find hope and how you practice self-care.
Well, I find hope in many things. I find hope in people's togetherness. I mean, people make relationships beyond the borders, beyond those boundaries. I know many people in Mytilene who have got together, they have built families, they have built friendships, they have built musical bands and choirs and other things beyond those boundaries that we think divide them. When people are given the chance, they build communities. I mean, if the Moria village, for instance, like there is a village and there is a concentration camp, okay? The Moria village was inhabited by migrants who were taken to Greece in 1923 in the population exchange between Turkey and Greece, like where all the Orthodox Christians in Turkey were forcibly moved to Greece, and all Muslims in Greece were forced to move to Turkey. So they were deprived and dispossessed and poor and all these things, the people who inhabited the Moria village. And it was like, they had tents, and then the tents became walls, and the walls became houses, and around the houses gardens grow. And we cannot imagine how the concentration camp of Moria is gonna grow, because we cannot imagine the future. But I think people who are there, they will probably, like, most of them will stay in Greece, maybe not in Moria village, but yeah, they will become shop owners, they will become farmers, they will become members of the society. Maybe it's gonna take a few generations until they are considered as the, like, indigenous people of Greece, but it will happen. Yeah.
Thanks, Rûnbîr. We're going to close out shortly. I just want to know if you have any final words, Rûnbîr, that you'd like to share.
I don't know. I was very happy to be given this privilege to come and, like, share about my life and my thoughts. Thanks for listening to me, and please don't lose hope. Think about what you appreciate in life and how amazing it would be for everyone to have freedom of movement in the world, for everyone to have a stable roof on their heads, for everyone to celebrate, to be able to breathe in clean air and be in ecologic diversity and all these things. Wish this for yourself and for everyone in the world, and I think it will take us to a better place.
Thanks for those words, Rûnbîr. And with that, we're going to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned, we will get to those questions that you've put in the Q&A box if we didn't answer them in this webinar. Thank you all. Be safe and well, and we'll see you all next one. Thank you.
Thank you.